Hey, so if you're interested in risk mitigation in your interview strategy, here's an analogy to help you and your team think about how to do risk mitigation. One is if you've got a highway, imagine a highway, let's say in California, big highway, 7 lanes, right? But there's no lane markers, right? So you've got this big wide road, lots of cars driving down it, but there's no lane markers. And what's the probability that there's going to be accidents, because of a lack of understanding between the parties about who's driving where and doing what, right? So you've got no lane markers, and let's say you're not using turn signals. That is your classic poorly thought out team interview strategy. And what happens is you have collisions, you have a lot of redundancy, you have a lot of blind spots in your interview, and you have a lack of accountability. What you need to do is create clear lanes of responsibility. I like to call them deciders. You take your job description, you break it down into its key elements, you assign part of your interviewing team the various areas of assessment that need to be made to ensure that somebody's actually a fit to the job description. You create a record of their assessment. That's an actual paper record or digital record of their assessment of that candidate in the area. Oftentimes, this requires teams to really think deeply about how to make these assessments, how to train the various interviewers to actually make these assessments instead of some fuzzy, intuitive gut feeling that they can't truly be accountable to. And you're creating real clarity between the team of who is doing what. And when we get through with this process, and we're trying to make a decision about who to hire or how to hire them or what their onboarding plan looks like or what their training plan looks like, we actually have real data to work with. And then let's say, heaven forbid, the candidate or the employee doesn't work out. We now have data to go back to and compare our expectations with actual reality, and we can find what did we miss. And this is important because sometimes I've heard companies say things like, the candidate that we hired isn't the candidate that showed up. And while perceptively that's understandable, the reality is they just did a poor job of interviewing because they didn't really know who they were hiring. And this is indicative of the fact that hiring and interviewing is very, very difficult. So if you think about your friendships, none of your friendships develop to a profoundly deep level where you would share potentially millions of dollars of liability together in a few hours. And yet, often in interviews and hiring, that's exactly what we're doing. And so I would argue if you're going to run a team interview strategy, you're going to take your hiring seriously, your team management and your team building very seriously as a leader, you need to be thinking about how to get a lot of touch points with candidates. And this was recently validated by one of my clients who reflected on a particularly powerful person they worked with who did a lot of hiring. And for all leadership hires, this person had a rule of having 10 touch points with a leadership candidate. And this would be in a large variety of contexts, right? Panel interviews, single interviews, coffee, dinner, etc., company events, because you need to see that person in a lot of contexts, and you need the various interviewers who are participating to know what are they responsible for really assessing in the candidate. So what I'm alluding to is the ambassador team interview strategy that we help our clients with. This is open source. We're happy for you to use it, whether you're a recruiter or you're doing hiring or HR or whatever. We want to see hiring happen at a higher quality level and for you to get better results, getting alignment with people and better results for them, right? Because this is not zero sum. This is net positive sum.